Oh boy. Hello everyone, my name is LaFox. This is the Logitech G Cloud handheld, and it's bad. You shouldn't get it. I take no pleasure in dunking on these devices. I'll explain why in this video, and we'll get onto it at the end of this video, kind of just all the things that are bad with it. I'll touch base on what things are good about it in the beginning, but I think collectively we all knew that this device was just way too expensive. Even with the introductory price of $300, it was still too expensive. Now that it's at its normal retail price of $350, it makes no sense compared to devices like the Retroid Pocket 3 if you were looking at it from a cloud gaming perspective. If you're saying, well, this device has too small of a screen, the Steam Deck is $400 and also plays games on the cloud on the Steam Deck and gets somewhat similar battery life when streaming games. So where does this device sit? When we take a look at it from a performance angle, when we take a look at everything that's wrong with this device, like fundamentally broken, this has no business being the price that it is. And even if it was a cheaper device, I still wouldn't recommend it until they fix some glaring issues. Some of them I don't think that they're going to have any chance to actually fix. Let's start with the good things, right? Let's start with the build quality. Overall, the build quality is easily the thing that stands out as best on the Logitech G handheld. If you were to go into a brick and mortar shop like Best Buy and they had this on display and you were to pick it up and use Xbox Cloud game streaming, both of these areas would highlight the device to be something super nice. The fit and finish of the plastic, the slightly raised dimpling of the plastic, how that feels and contours around your hands, especially around the handles, and even the triggers feel very nice to press down. The entire experience of holding the device, the weight distribution and everything, super nice. Really, really good. Top notch. The other nice thing that I could say about it, and I can't really demonstrate on video, is the rumble is interesting. It's almost haptic-like. It's pretty punchy. In my opinion, I like it a lot. The other thing we got to talk about is battery life. And this is one area where it's very good by having a kind of low-spec, mid-tier SoC on this device. The battery life on this device is very good. Here I have PlayStation 1 emulation. I'm doing 3 times internal resolution. And I just have Crash going around in circles for a while. And it lasted 8 hours and 45 minutes. Almost 9 hours. Now, Logitech claims that it gets up to 12 hours. Mind you, I had that at full brightness and the speakers blaring while that was going. So it's kind of a almost worst case scenario because this is going to be game streaming mostly. And in game streaming, it shouldn't be as demanding. So getting up to 12 hours like Logitech says, I think that is a relative goal that it can hit. This being almost 9 hours, let's say 8 hours as your worst case scenario, even that is still very good. That is pretty much the only good things I have to say about the Logitech G handheld. Rounding out the build side of this, the Android software suite, the handheld portion that Logitech made is, in my opinion, fundamentally broken, or if this is by design, it is fundamentally too restrictive. First, in handheld mode, no gesture works on the touchscreen. Additionally, you can't bring down the notification shade. The only thing that you have to navigate on the device is the face buttons, and then if you need to get out, the only ejection seat that you have is the home button. So if you just needed to hit back on Android, but you can't because you can't swipe, there's no gesture support, you actually have to exit out of the game. Additionally, when you try to open up another application, the handheld mode is supposed to close the other application. But if you jump in tablet mode, you'll realize through the multitasking app that it never closed anything. It says that it is, but it actually doesn't. So it's really bizarre. I don't like it. If you do wind up having this device, only use the tablet mode, because the tablet mode, at least you have the notification shade, you have the back gesture that you can put in there. Like for Dolphin, I had the virtual controls up when I first recorded just because I couldn't get to it. I tried plugging in a mouse and a keyboard to try to get that, and it still wasn't working. I had to go in, once I went to tablet mode, I actually pressed the back button, which I can show you later. So, bottom line here is the handheld side, the handheld mode that Logitech has made here is not fully baked. Going into the settings screen, you can hear that when you press on the screen, there is indication that you're pressing it, but nothing on the settings screen is being highlighted. You actually have to use the controller to move around. So it's a little weird because you can use the touchscreen in the main menu, but not in the settings screen. So there's just weird disparities there that it just feels not fully baked. So use the tablet function, which is just general Android, and you're going to have a better time just moving around. The other sad part to see that in the software side of things, there is no virtual button mapping software, that, at least that I could find. The only thing that I could find was to remap the buttons that are on the controller itself. So you can make B and A and B, so you can move those around, or any other button. You can't remap the G button, which is a bit unfortunate. I would have liked to have made that like the back button, but you can't even do that. But there is no virtual mapping for any particular Android native game that doesn't have gamepad support, so that you can map virtual touch inputs to the gamepad. That is also a thing that I fundamentally think is missing. So build quality wise, presentation wise, and holding in your hand, battery life, those are all very good. Everything else on there isn't great. And you pretty much have to default to the native tablet mode just to have a decent experience while using the device. Next up, I want to talk about performance before we start really getting into the bad part of the Logitech G Cloud handheld. If we were to compare the Logitech G handheld to the Retroid Pocket 3, right? If we were just to compare these devices, performance-wise, emulation is slightly better on the G Cloud handheld. We can hit better PSP emulation, so there are going to be some games that don't run on the Retroid Pocket 3, but they will be running on the G Cloud. So there is a slight bump there. PS2 emulation also sees a bump. Burnout 3 is a game that is a little bit more demanding, is not very playable on the Retroid Pocket 3, but is playable on the G Cloud. However, there are still games that are a bit too demanding for this particular SoC. Jack 3, for instance, when you're using hardware acceleration, it's going to be kind of messy looking. You can fix this by going to software rendering or OpenGL. OpenGL doesn't fare as well, and software rendering does render perfectly fine, but runs even slower. So there is no happy medium there. So there are going to be still PS2 games that are not playable on this device. And then you have games like Ratchet and Clank, which are just slightly under. And this is where, if we just had just a little bit more oomph, we would have actually been able to get better Gamecube emulation. But as it stands, there is a lot of Gamecube games that are just not going to be very playable on this device. Likewise, they're not playable on the Retroid Pocket 3 either, but you're paying nearly 3 times more for the Logitech G Cloud handheld, and it's not 3 times better. It's maybe 20% better. So maybe you should be paying $170 for this device, not $350. Next up, just native Android games like Fortnite. Maybe you want to play Fortnite on this device. It doesn't recognize the right trigger button for whatever reason. Maybe that's just a software thing that needs to get worked out by Fortnite. But for now, I had to map it to right bumper. And even then, while I was playing, this is at lowest settings. And while moving around and in action-heavy scenes, it was stuttering a bunch. It just constantly just bouncing around and being very not fun to play. Likewise in Diablo Immortal, another popular Android native game, once you get to action-heavy scenes, it starts to stutter at the most demanding parts where you actually need it to not stutter the most. So, yeah, it's just not very good there either. And then if we take a look at Genshin Impact, which has no gamepad support whatsoever, there is no virtual mapping on the screen, so you can't even play Genshin Impact without using it like a tablet, but now your hands are so far apart that using it like that isn't comfortable at all. So it doesn't really play Android native games very well, or the bigger Android native games. It doesn't play very well. It doesn't really emulate much better than its competition that's 3 times less expensive. You know, for the most part, it's not even marketed to it. It has cloud in its name, so it's meant for cloud gaming. And it works just fine on Xbox xCloud. The G button brings up the Xbox button, works and plays perfectly. I had 0 issues playing any Xbox game streaming game. And that's what it's marketed for. So if this is what you wanted, I have more to talk about there, but for the price, if you wanted a big device with a big screen, get a Steam Deck. If you wanted a less expensive device, a Retro Pocket 3 will do the same thing. Let's talk about the bad things on this device. So first up is the refresh rate. When you power up the device from a cold boot, the refresh rate is solid 60. However, after time, especially in emulation, you're going to notice this more. The refresh rate starts like flicking back and forth. It goes all the way down to about 58.4 hertz and kind of snaps back to 59.7 hertz. And I don't know when it starts doing this, but it just takes like about an hour or two of it being on and playing with it before, if you were emulating, you'll actually start to notice this. And it's not a great experience. So I don't know why it goes from a locked 60 hertz and then starts flickering like crazy. Hopefully this is something they can fix with software updates. Right now, this isn't ideal. Second, the analog sticks have gigantic dead zones along the entire cardinal axis. It is absolutely insane how big these dead zones are. There's no reason for it. Usually a dead zone is going to be dead in the center, and you want to have some dead zone just so you don't get input when the stick is stationary. So there is going to be some dead zone. But you don't need a dead zone going up, down, left, right along the entire XY axis. It is nonsense how they've done this. You basically have an issue where when you push it a little bit, your character will start walking. You push a little bit more, and they're full on running. It is almost digital. That I don't know what they're doing here. Hopefully, this can be fixed with a firmware update to the controller or a software update, because these dead zones are insane. Next up is the D-pad. The D-pad can be good, but you have to press down so hard on the diagonals to actually get them to work. Now, I'm going to show you in two different methods. Number one, I'm going to show you it synthetically just being shown on a screen. I'm going to press very lightly, and you can see that the diagonals never actually happen. Diagonal meaning down and right being pressed at the same time. You'll see that it just kind of flickers between down and right, or left and down. If I start pressing hard, you'll see that I'll be able to actually press both of them. How this translates into gameplay, if you're going to be playing like something like Street Fighter, it is amazingly difficult to pull off a Dragon Punch if you're just trying to feather the D-pad, which is how I want to do it. You have to actually press exceedingly hard. You have to put a good amount of force down to be able to guarantee that what you're trying to press is what you're trying to press. The problem with pressing so hard is that you will fatigue your hands fast. It's going to cramp up your hands. So the D-pad, there is no software fix for this. This is just a hardware issue. The D-pad can be good if you don't mind pressing exceedingly hard just to get it to press a button that you want. If you only ever plan on pressing left, right, up, and down, then you're not going to have any problem whatsoever, because you can press very lightly and then it'll press that button, no problem. But diagonals wise, it's not good. Again, to touch base on what I said earlier on in the build section of this, the operating system is not fully baked here. There definitely needs to be some virtual mapping support that is available so you can map virtual touch to the controller. Not having this limits a lot of Android games that will not be playable on this device without having that feature and functionality. That could be a software update later on. It's not here at present. But even saying that, it doesn't have enough horsepower to really play some of the bigger Android games. So, I don't know. It's a weird device. It's a weird device that if you were going to get this device for cloud gaming reasons, it's $350 now, unless you bought it pre-order, which is $300. But you're going to be paying $350 now if you didn't get that incentive, which means you're $50 away from a Steam Deck. If you were going to play this for cloud gaming, the Steam Deck already does that and gets good battery life while streaming games. You can see here that it's taking 7 watts. That's total power. That's going to give you almost 6 hours of battery life. It's not 8 or 10, but 6 hours is still a long time. And this is Wi-Fi only. It's not like you're going to go out and about. There's no cellular connection on this. So you're going to be home anyway. What's the difference between 6 hours and 8 hours if you're home? I don't think it's that big of a difference that you're going to be plugging in. A 6-hour stint of gaming is a long stint of gaming. The extra 2 hours, I don't think is going to be a make or break moment. If you look at it at the other end, the Retroid Pocket 3 also does cloud streaming just fine and costs $132 shipped, $134 shipped. So almost 3 times less expensive and does cloud gaming just fine and is amazingly smaller. So here's the deal, right? Like, this device is impossible to recommend. Number one, it's not fully baked. It's not ready. Even if they were to fix all the software issues, which they potentially could. They could fix the LCD refresh rate issue. They can fix the analog weird dead zone issue. The D-pad they can't fix. They can add virtual mapping support onto this device. You can skip the handheld mode of it and just do tablet only mode. And then at that point, you have a decent device. But it's still too expensive compared to its competitors. I would still recommend, basically, if you like the size of the screen, get a Steam Deck. If you don't care about the size of the screen, get a Retroid Pocket 3 if you want cloud gaming. That's my recommendation. Skip the Logitech G Cloud handheld. It's in a no man's land of not being recommendable in any degree whatsoever. Again, I take no pleasure in dunking on this device. It can be a lot of this can be fixed. Right now, it's not good. So, I mean, that's it. Hopefully Logitech fixes all the issues. These are just the issues that I found. Maybe there's some updates that can fix Android native game issues as well. But right now, this is a no from me. So that's my review on the Logitech G Cloud handheld. As always, guys, thank you for your time. And thanks for watching.